Welcome to Whispers of Wisdom, where history comes alive through the echoes of time. Today, we journey across the wild steppes of Mongolia, the birthplace of a legend. From an outcast boy to the ruler of the world's greatest empire. This is the rise of Genghis Khan. Under the boundless blue sky of Mongolia, Temüjin was born clutching a blood clot in his tiny fist, a sign, the elders whispered, of one destined to rule. His father, Yasujii, was a respected chieftain of the Borjigin clan, and his mother, Holun, a woman of indomitable spirit. For a few fleeting years, their family knew the fragile peace of the nomadic life. Herds grazing in the wind, children chasing shadows across the grasslands, the smell of wood smoke and mare's milk. That peace shattered when Yasujii was poisoned by Tatars, old enemies of his people. With his death, the Borjigin tribe abandoned Holun and her children to the wild. Without protection, they became prey to hunger, wolves, and rival clans. Temüjin, still a boy, learned to fight not for glory, but for survival. He trapped fish with bare hands, scavenged roots, and watched his mother hold their family together through sheer will. In those hungry years, the young Temüjin's spirit hardened. He learned that loyalty was fragile, that mercy could be fatal, and that strength came not from bloodline, but resolve. When his half-brother Bektar began hoarding food, challenging Temüjin's right to lead, the boy made a terrible choice. He killed him. The act haunted him, yet it carved his path, the first step of a leader who would one day demand absolute unity. At night, he gazed at the stars, listening to the wind whisper through the grass. The steppe was merciless, but it was also a teacher. It taught him silence, patience, endurance, the virtues of the wolf. And somewhere in that endless expanse, a vision began to form, a world where no tribe need fear hunger, betrayal, or exile again. Temüjin had begun his climb toward destiny. Years passed, and Temüjin grew into a young man shaped by hardship and guided by an unyielding will. The boy who once starved on the steppe now carried the weight of ambition in his eyes, the dream of uniting the scattered Mongol tribes under one banner. But dreams alone could not conquer the chaos of the steppe. He needed allies, and above all, loyalty. He found both in Jamuka, a spirited youth from another clan. The two swore an Anda oath, a sacred brotherhood bound by blood. Together they shared meat, hunted under the same sky, and whispered of a future free from endless tribal wars. For a time, they were inseparable, brothers in heart, if not in blood. During this period, Temüjin married Borte, the daughter of the Angerat tribe. Borte's calm intelligence and political instinct matched his own resolve. Their union was more than love. It was an alliance that strengthened Temüjin's claim to leadership. With Borte by his side, he began forging connections through marriage, trade, and trust, the invisible web that would one day hold an empire together. Yet even as alliances grew, so did unease. Temüjin's leadership style, strict discipline, merit over birthright, angered traditional nobles. He rewarded loyalty from even the lowest herdsmen, defying the old hierarchy. Jamuka, proud and born of noble blood, began to see his blood brother's vision as dangerous. When minor tribes began flocking to Temüjin's banner, calling him Khan, Jamuka's admiration turned to envy. The bond of brotherhood began to fray, replaced by whispers of betrayal and destiny. Amid the roaring wind and endless plains, Temüjin stood at a crossroads, torn between friendship and the dream of unity. The steppe had given him a brother. Soon, it would demand a rival. Peace on the steppe was a fleeting illusion. Not long after Temüjin's marriage, fate struck again. One night, while Temüjin was away forging alliances, a band of Merkits descended upon his camp, seeking revenge for his father's old crimes. They raided his home, stole his herds, and carried away his beloved wife, Borte. The theft was not only of love, but of honor. In the eyes of the steppe, no man could call himself a leader if he could not protect his own. Temüjin's grief burned into fury. With only a handful of men, he could not hope to face the Merkits alone. Swallowing his pride, He rode to seek aid from his former allies, Togrul, the powerful Khan of the Kharite, and Jamukha, his blood brother. Moved by his plea, and perhaps by the chance to strike at a common enemy, they agreed to help. Together, their combined armies thundered across the plains in a storm of hooves and arrows. The battle was swift and merciless. The Merkit camp burned beneath the night sky, screams echoing into the valleys. Amid the chaos, Temüjin found Borte, shaken, scarred but alive. When she returned to Izgir, she carried not only the memory of captivity, but a child, Joki, whose paternity would forever cast a shadow within the Khan's family. Yet in that moment, Temüjin's heart was filled not with doubt, but determination. The rescue had proven something to him. Unity could conquer even the deepest wounds of the steppe. His friendship with Jamukha, however, began to strain. What was once brotherhood now flickered with envy and mistrust. From the ashes of the Merkit, a new fire was kindled, one that would forge Temüjin into more than a man. It would make him a leader of nations. The bond between Temüjin and Jamukha, once sealed in brotherhood, began to crumble like dry earth beneath the hooves of war horses. Their shared dream of uniting the Mongols had twisted into rivalry. Temüjin envisioned a new order where rank was earned through loyalty and merit. Jamukha clung to the old world of noble birth and privilege. The steppe, vast and merciless, was not large enough for two visions of destiny. The first spark of war ignited when Jamukha declared himself Gurkhan, universal ruler. Many of the older, aristocratic tribes rallied to his side, scorning Temüjin's rise from humble origins. Temüjin's camp, by contrast, was filled with men who had once been slaves, herdsmen, and wanderers, those who believed in his promise of fairness and order. What began as a contest of ideals soon became a test of blood. When the two forces met, the steppe thundered. The air was thick with dust and death cries as mounted archers weaved across the plains, loosing arrows faster than the eye could follow. Temüjin's discipline triumphed over Jamukha's pride. His soldiers fought in organized units, moving with precision where Jamukha's nobles charged in chaos. When victory came, it was brutal and absolute. Jamukha was betrayed by his own men and delivered to Temüjin in chains. Yet Temüjin, bound by the memory of brotherhood, refused to spill his blood. Instead, Jamukha was executed by having his back broken, a death without bloodshed, a cruel mercy under Mongol law. After the battle, Temüjin gathered his warriors and laid down the yasa, a new code to bind his people in law and loyalty. The tribes that once wandered in chaos now bowed to his command. The wolf had conquered the wolf. The age of Temüjin had begun. The wars of unification had scarred the Mongolian steppe, but from its ashes, a new order rose. By the year 1206, Temüjin had done what no man before him had achieved. He had united the warring Mongol tribes under a single banner. The Kurultai, the great tribal assembly, was summoned on the banks of the Onan River. There, beneath the vast and cloudless sky, thousands gathered, warriors, chieftains, shamans, and elders, all waiting to witness history. Temüjin stood before them, no longer the outcast boy who had once begged for scraps. His presence commanded silence. He spoke not of conquest, but of unity, of forging one nation from many, of creating a world where loyalty mattered more than lineage, and where justice would bind men stronger than fear. When he finished, the assembly roared in one voice, proclaiming him Genghis Khan, universal ruler, chosen beneath the eternal blue sky. The new Khan wasted no time shaping his empire. He reorganized the army into units that mixed tribes, ensuring loyalty to him above clan. He rewarded the brave and punished betrayal without mercy. Under his command, the yasa became sacred law, a code that governed everything from theft to warfare, demanding discipline and unity. Temüjin also opened trade routes, protected merchants, and introduced messengers on swift horses to carry news across the steppe, the first threads of a vast communication network that would one day stretch across continents. Yet even as he celebrated, his gaze turned outward. To the south lay the rich cities of China. To the west, the powerful kingdoms of Central Asia. The steppe could no longer contain his vision. Temüjin, now Genghis Khan, had bound the tribes together. The time had come to bind the world. With the Mongol tribes united beneath his banner, Genghis Khan turned his eyes toward the great empires that bordered his world. To the south lay Xia and the mighty Jin dynasty, kingdoms of wealth and walled cities. Everything the Mongols were not. But to Genghis, those walls were not barriers, they were challenges. His first campaign struck Xia. The Mongols moved like a living storm, swift, disciplined, and merciless. They mastered siege warfare through cunning rather than tradition, using captured engineers and inventing ways to break the walls that once mocked them. The Xia rulers, shocked by the speed and brutality of his assault, surrendered and became vassals. It was Genghis Khan's first taste of imperial conquest, and it only sharpened his hunger. Next came the Jin Empire, powerful and proud, ruling from its golden capital of Zhengdu, present-day Beijing. The Jin had long treated the Mongols as wild barbarians, unworthy of diplomacy or respect. Genghis Khan would answer that arrogance with fire. His armies swept across the northern plains in waves, each division moving with precision and purpose. The Mongol horsemen struck like lightning, retreating only to draw enemies into ambushes. The sieges of Jin fortresses lasted months, but Genghis Khan's patience never wavered. He ordered trenches dug, rivers diverted, and towers built from the very corpses of fallen soldiers. When Zhengdu finally fell in 1215, its streets ran with ash and silence. The world began to whisper his name, some in awe, others in terror. From the endless grasslands, a new power had emerged, forged in unity and guided by the will of the eternal blue sky. The Mongols were no longer a scattered people. They had become the thunder that would shake the world. After conquering the east, Genghis Khan turned his gaze westward, toward the Khwarezmian Empire, a vast realm of silk roads, shining cities, and proud rulers. Genghis sought peace first, sending merchants and envoys to establish trade. But his gesture of diplomacy was met with treachery. At the city of Otrar, the Khwarezmian governor Inalchuk accused the Mongol envoys of spying and executed them. When Genghis sent a second delegation demanding justice, the Shah, Ala ad-Din Muhammad II, had the ambassadors murdered and their beards burned, an unforgivable insult under Mongol law. Fury consumed Genghis Khan. He swore before the eternal blue sky that he would annihilate the Khwarezmian Empire. In 1219, his armies rode west like a black wind. They crossed deserts thought impassable, splitting into multiple forces that struck like claws from every direction. Cities that resisted were erased. Those that surrendered were spared. A lesson of fear and choice. At Bokhara, Genghis stood in the mosque before a trembling crowd and declared, "If you had not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you." The city burned soon after. Samarkand fell next, its defenders overwhelmed by speed and deception. The Shah fled, chased to the edge of the Caspian Sea, where he died in exile, broken and forgotten. But vengeance had not cooled Genghis's fire. At Reshaped, after a Mongol commander was slain, an entire city was massacred, its people buried beneath the dust of their own ruins. By the campaign's end, Khwarezm was no more. From the yellow sands of Central Asia rose the legend of an unstoppable force. Genghis Khan's empire now stretched from the Pacific to the Caspian, an empire carved not by greed, but by wrath and destiny. By the late 1220s, the world trembled beneath the hoofbeats of the Mongol Empire. From the shores of the Pacific to the deserts of Persia, Genghis Khan had forged the largest dominion ever ruled by one man. Yet, even as the empire expanded, the great Khan grew older. His hair had turned to silver, his body scarred by decades of battle, but his will remained unbroken. The fire that had driven the boy from the steppes still burned within him. In his final years, Genghis sought to secure the foundations of what he had built. He appointed his sons Joki Chagatai, Ogdi, and Talyui to govern different parts of the realm, urging them to rule as one family, under the eternal blue sky. But cracks were already forming. Old rivalries, questions of Joki's birth, and ambitions of succession whispered in the shadows of the great camp. The Khan knew that unity, like conquest, required constant vigilance. When the Tangut kingdom of Xia rebelled against Mongol rule, Genghis personally led the campaign despite his failing health. His vengeance was swift and total. Cities were leveled, their rulers executed. Yet the victory was his last. During the campaign, he fell ill, some say from injury, others from fever. Even as he weakened, he called his generals and sons to his side, commanding them to keep the empire united and to conquer far beyond the horizons he had seen. In 1227, beneath the endless Mongolian sky, Genghis Khan died. His burial place was kept secret, his tomb hidden, his escort silenced. No monument marked his resting place. Only the wind carried his name. But his legacy endured, not just in the empires that followed, but in the unbroken echo of the steppe. The wolf of the eternal sky had become immortal.